Hello everyone and welcome back to the channel for what I think will probably be the final installment of this particular series of my supposedly improved introductory scenario for Upfront. Before I get going, I'd really like to thank those of you who've taken the trouble to watch the first two episodes of this series, and particularly those of you who've really helpfully pointed out to me where I've made some slip-ups with the rules. I'm afraid, sorry everyone, there have been a few of those already. I have updated the descriptions as necessary, so if you didn't see those in the previous videos, please do go back and have a look. But to recap, basically, the most serious recurring error I made was with ordnance attacks and the target acquisition, where you flip the counter. Now, I somehow got my brain into the bad habit of flipping the counter back every time an armored vehicle, or basically an ordnance weapon, did not fire the next turn. So essentially just going quiet was enough to lose the acquisition. That was wrong. So acquisition is only lost if the targeted group or unit moves, or if the firing unit suffers a malfunction to its ordnance, a bit like what happens to my poor Stuart, or if at night time, in a night scenario, if you lose observation, you lose acquisition. Smoke doesn't affect acquisition, so that's another thing. I mean, it makes it a bit, it cancels out the benefit of acquisition, but you don't lose target acquisition if the target is subsequently wreathed in smoke. So it doesn't disappear as easily as I've been making it disappear in this game. The other mistakes I made were, there was one right at the beginning where I mistakenly said you can reject terrain that's discarded on you at the beginning of the game. You cannot do that. So the marsh that landed on my guys in Group C at the beginning would have stayed anyway, regardless of anything I did. And the very last one was young Private Fratali there fixing his weapon. He should not have been able to do that in a marsh. There are 3 circumstances in this game in which you cannot repair your weapon. One is when you're stuck in a marsh. Another is if you occupy, or your group occupies, stream terrain. And the third is if you're moving. So those are the restrictions on when you can repair your weapon. But hopefully that's going to be the end of it. And without further ado, I shall jump back into seeing if I can wind up this engagement. So when we left the opposing forces at the end of the last video, it was just about to be the US turn again. Fortunes are very mixed on both sides. The Germans have established an armour superiority now. My poor Stuart is not only buttoned up with the crew cowering inside, just to make their lives even worse, their main gun has malfunctioned, so they're not doing very well at all. The German tank is sitting quite pretty and is still a major threat, and because my tank basically was my anti-tank weapon, I now have no... Unless that tank sorts its act out, I have no means of countering that monster. That said, the picture is not universally bleak. In contrast, very sharp contrast to how the tanks have been performing, the US infantry has done an absolutely sterling job so far. I mean, with no losses, and I think pretty much no one's been pinned either. They've not only been steadily keeping their German opposite numbers' heads down, they've actually managed to kill a fair few of them and actually drive one to flee the field. And given that victory could rest on simply breaking the opposing squad, things are not looking too bad on that front. If we can survive the tender ministrations of that horrible German tank over there, and develop this superiority we've been building over the German infantry, the day may yet be ours. So let's take our turn and see what happens. Now, I'm in a bit of a pickle, really, because I have that beautiful card, which is just crying to be used on ordnance. but I can't really use it for that at the moment. What I will do is my group in the gully, is, given how low their morale ratings are, I'm going to dash them into the strongest building I can find. And from that strong point, I'm going to carry on seeing if I can cause mischief. This will include continuing to lean on the unfortunate Private Beck, because if I can induce him to run away or die, that is 50% of the German infantry gone. So he is their weak link. They need to try and avoid anything bad happening to him. Although, mind you, not that they would know this in a real game, but my ability to inflict much harm on him at the moment's a bit low. I'm going to try and repair my tank's gun because there's little else that they can do. So it's a fairly straightforward repair. 0 to 6 on a black random number check fixes it. A red 6 makes the malfunction permanent. Now that is extremely bad news if that happens. And we fix it. Well done, boys. I knew you had it in you. So at least we can fire again, at least in a fairly meaningful way. Now, my group C is at relative range 3 to them still, which means 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. 12. We are just short of being able to use that beautiful card, and I have no hero cards that would enable me to double anybody's firepower. That is a real shame. I'm just going to grind my teeth for now, draw a card, and actually, I was about to be very disdainful of that card, but we could take Private Beck under fire next turn. So what are the Germans going to do? They're in a bit of a pickle. They still have no rally cards. They've been really unlucky with rally cards all game. And they're very conscious that they need to do something because their infantry are in a really parlous state. Very gallingly for the German side, their LMG was pinned and has simply not had a chance to recover, so their firepower has been severely curtailed by that. And with that, coupled with the losses among their large fire group, it's far less effective and scary than it was at the beginning of the game. So what can they do? The absence of any kind of rally card means that Beck over there can't do anything. Most of this squad, this group can't do anything. It's really just their tank. They've got a forward movement card, not much good. A regular movement card. I think they might have to consider, I don't know really, the temptation is to drive their tank up, right up to relative range 5 to my group A and start blasting them to pieces, either with cannon fire or machine gun fire. To be honest, I wouldn't be in any hurry to enter close combat with that AFV, not with such a low morale group. It also puts them in a good position to finish off my tank. And it would certainly distract my group A from trying to finish off Beck. Because, again, in theory, the Germans don't know I have a firing card in my hand. So, desperation being the mother of questionable plans, they're going to go for it. They're going to advance. Now, in moving, they do now lose their acquisition on my group because they've decided to get in gear and shift themselves. But the next time they choose to shoot at me, it'll be a much more advantageous shot because the distance has closed. And they have some terrain they could move into that could make them hull down. In fact, they're spoiled for choice. They could either enter the hill or they could enter the wall. Well, not enter the, you know what I mean, get behind the wall. And they have a rally card, so things are actually looking up for them now. So, over to me. Am I going to take the shot that potentially finishes the game? Do you know what? I think I will. That tank is clanking forward. But I have a fairly shrewd idea that if its accompanying infantry runs away, it'll be a major disincentive for whoever's commanding it to carry on. So my Group A is going to take a shot at poor Private Beck. So our fire strength is 2, reduced to 1 because he's on a hill. And the Germans, desperate to avoid what they can see coming, further reduces it to a 0. And they are extraordinarily fortunate. Private Beck hugs the ground, but holds his ground, and he is not left. Okay. Now my tank, now that it's got its main gun back, could potentially use that. The question is, same sort of dilemma, do I try and put a hole in the German tank, or do I try and chase off Private Beck? I think, in the interest of attempting to win the scenario, maybe this is a bit gamey of me. I don't know if a US tank crew would really try and pick off an individual man when they had a panzer clanking towards them. But in the interest of trying to put an end to this nonsense and open up their flank so we can start enveloping them, that's a happy thought. I'm going to cash in this card so that my Stuart over there can take a shot at him. Now the range is 1, so this is going to be a tough shot, and I need a 0 in order to hit him. So here goes, and I hit him. Well, I hit his position at any rate. So I have acquired him. My attack strength is 1, reduced to 0 for the hill. Let's see what happens. Ah, okay. He's covered in earth and junk and other stuff, but despite the fact that he's having a really bad day, Beck is doing an impressive job of hanging in there. So that's hugely annoying. It's not over yet. In fact, it's far from over. Because we're about to find out how the Germans respond to this. Well, unluckily for me, Private Beck, evidently realizing that he's a bit invincible, is going to rally, which makes him a tiny bit less vulnerable than he was a turn ago. And in the meantime, just to make life even worse, to be honest, that hill would benefit the infantry more than it benefits my tank. The German tank. Wait, let me start that sentence again. The hill would benefit the German infantry at some point more than it would the tank. So their tank is simply going to drive up to that low wall and get itself into a nice, comfy position. So they can settle down and start blasting away again next turn. They can't move to take advantage of either this card. To be honest, they probably don't want to move out of that building at the moment because my Group C has already shown them what it can do on previous turns, so I don't think they're too eager to budge forward. So they're just going to draw cards and wait on events. Hopefully their tank can be the tiebreaker. And you know what? It might well succeed, because I once more find myself in possession of some really, really unhelpful cards. Now, I've got loads of rally cards. I am going to get rid of that card because it's a cower card for me, which is a bit useless. And to be honest, I'm not that keen on smoke at the moment, so those two can go. So keeping these, let's see what I get. Ooh, more movement. Okay, that does give me options. Now, what do the Germans want to do? Now, Beck is not in a very happy place. And he also has some terrible decisions to make, because the temptation with Beck is to move him sideways, lateral movement, to get him into better terrain. To be honest, the wall would benefit him a lot better than the hill he's on at the moment. But there's another thing at play here, because the Germans don't know what I've got in my hand by way of movement cards. And by pushing a four-man group forward, I've given them the slightly worrying thought that I might be gunning for getting to relative range chit 4, whack down some defensive terrain and win the game that way. So what this suggests is Beck maybe needs to move at least one position forward rather than laterally, just so that he becomes a blocking force to last long enough until their tank can do something about that force. So, or at least, you know, the 4 men in Group A. But moving him is going to involve a huge amount of risk. At least moving him forward would. I mean, to be honest, moving him sideways would. His morale's 1, so it's not looking great, whatever he does. Retreating is really not an option, because that would almost be handing victory to me. So, what is he going to do? He does want to move in any case, because my tank acquired him last turn, and he really doesn't want to hang around and eat more shell fire. It's a tough question, really. The Germans do have a lot of movement cards, so maybe he can be a bit more reactive. So, yes, he's going to go for a lateral move. He's going to scurry away from his hidey hole to make life difficult for my tank, but keeping life fairly difficult for my Group A. It means he leaves behind the spare rifle that his mate dropped earlier. I don't think the German tank wants to move. It's got a good position there. It's scarily close to my Group A, and for the reasons I mentioned previously, mainly their low morale, I'm really not keen on them trying to enter close combat against that monster. I don't want to put low morale men through the agony of that kind of infiltration. And no, it's not happening. Stay there. But really, there's not much else the Germans can do with the cards they have in hand. They do want to keep these because they're all potentially quite valuable. So they're going to draw a card. Ooh, nice. Their patience has been rewarded. They're going to sit on that and ponder their next move. Now, over to me. See, I'm not terribly sure what I want to do either. I think I can't shoot, which is really annoying. I'm pretty happy where everyone is. I mean, my tank is hull down on the hill. What I'm tempted to do, this is a huge risk because I know what happened to German Group C when they attempted this earlier in the game. I'm going to take a chance the Germans don't have any decent firing cards, because in theory I don't know whether they do or not. And I'm going to rush Group C forward to see if they can try conclusions with that lot. I do have a buildings card, a bit weaker than the one we're leaving, but still, it'll do. So they're going to dash forward. Also, I appreciate brings them awfully close to that German tank, but maybe if I can threaten it with some hardened soldiers, then, you know, I'm not so much thinking as engaging in close combat with it, but if we can spray it with enough bullets, we could force it to button up and reduce its combat effectiveness. It would certainly help my tank out. And, you know, we've got plenty of concealment cards and a rally, 2 rally cards. So there is a risk, but it's a manageable risk, I feel. We'll just wait and watch while the universe shows me just how wrong I am. Okay, so back to the Germans. Private Beck will, of course, gratefully dive behind the wall. He's found himself a much nicer position there. The tank. The tank has an impressive firepower card over there, and it's pretty much the only German unit that can play it. Now, it's in an extremely target-rich environment now, and the question it needs to ask itself is, what's it going to shoot at? Now, there's lots of infantry here who are up to mischief of all sorts as far as the Germans are concerned. There's also an annoying tank that could do with being destroyed, but the tank is way on the edge of, the Allied side of the battlefield, and it's, in terms of winning the game, it's not actually contributing that much, other than being a bit of an existential threat to the German tank. But we've had that competition, and they've very much established their dominance. They can probably afford to ignore me. So that is well worth using for its ordnance capability. The question is who to shoot at. They've got very low morale, but they're in a very strong defensive position. They've got very high morale, and they're in a very strong defensive position, but they're moving out of it. So playing the odds game, it's difficult to know. A good hit would send a lot of them scurrying away, and that's nearly half my squad over there. Then again, the time-wasting argument suggests that they should spend more time drawing more random number checks. It's very, very difficult. I think the Germans will opt for scaring this lot off, so they're going to open fire. At this range, it's 0 to 5 to hit, so it's a sure thing, almost. Or is it? The United States says no, so they need to draw 0 to 3 in order to hit. What swung it for me in the end was the fact that Group C is moving means that red random number checks would have missed, whereas this group is stationary, so you can ignore the colour. And the Germans hit. So adding the random number to their effect number, that's a total of 2. The strength of the building makes the final attack value a -1. Let's see what happens. Private Smith is all right. Private Burke is all right. Private Cantatore is fine. And Private DG is fine. Well, we were very lucky there. We've been acquired by the German tank, but all it's done is cover us with a fine layer of brick dust and probably led to some fairly coarse language, but I'll take it. At least these fellows are intact. And so we'll leave that there for the Germans this turn. See, in theory, they don't know what terrain I have in my hand. If they discarded the hill card on me, that would give me an interesting bit of decision making. But to their minds, why would you discard a nice defensive position like that on your opponent, especially if you've got cards like that coming up? That's going to be fun for me next turn. So, you guys have attracted the attentions of a tank. That's not good. Although, let me see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. They can't really draw bead on Beck with that massive firing card. But the thought occurs to me that we could try and pin that tank, maybe even get a commander killed result if we're lucky. So, relative range is 5. They've easily got that. They've got 16 firepower points at that range. So my group of morale wimpy men is going to open fire at the tank. Now, being an armoured vehicle, it cannot benefit from concealment cards, and because we're firing at it obliquely, the wall only reduces the attack strength by 1. So attack strength is 4. 9! 5 plus 4 is 9. We have met the crew exposed threshold. Now what that means is, not only is the tank forced to button up, go to that side, but the commander has been killed. So I'll just go and find an appropriate counter. So my little gang of infantry there have done that tank far greater harm than my Stuart ever did. As you can see from the commander killed token, it's -1 to hit with ordnance, and your machine gun fire strength is reduced as well. And there's bonuses if I try to infiltrate his position. So that is really good for us. So yeah, that'll teach the poor guy to poke his head too far out of his hatch. And that was splendid shooting. Well done, those chaps. Sorry, that wasn't very authentically US, but you know what I mean. Right, so I think that's about the limit. Oh no, wait, my tank can't do anything, but Group C can dash into the building, probably wondering why the enemy tank isn't trying to draw bead on them, but they certainly owe the guys in Group A a beer after this. And things are looking a lot sunnier than they were a few minutes ago. And we seem to continue having a monopoly on all the rally cards. Oh yes, the forcing that tank to button up and losing their commander has also knocked out their target acquisition. Mainly because he's had to, well, his head's been kept down permanently. So now, it doesn't mean he can't shoot, which is bad news for me. So he's going to try and get some vengeance for what's just happened to him. Only this time, now that my Group C has stopped moving, should he switch targets, because that's a bigger group and they're in a weaker building, he might switch. We're going back to the strategy of wasting time. So it is relative range 5. But I have to bear in mind that it's -1 to the to-hit rating, so we're looking at 0 to 2 rather than 0 to 3. Also, just to be really mean, I'm going to play another concealment card on Group C, which means that it's treated as being at relative range 3. So between that and the commander killed, he now needs to draw 0 to land a hit. Let's see what happens. Nope. Close but no cigar, the only consolation being that they've acquired Group C now. But the Germans are not finished yet, because they have a sniper card which they're quite happily going to discard on Group C, because if they're lucky, if he gets a KIA result, and that is a really good sniper card, look at that, he could pin me very easily and there's a good chance of him killing someone. If I lose my sergeant or my corporal, that would be a fairly major blow. So let's start with the random position check. Oh dear, the sniper is lining up on Corporal Moores, and his random number check is, oh no, a 4. My squad has just suffered its first casualty. Poor Corporal Moores has just bought it. And he has bequeathed to his fellows his little Thompson. So, I'm not sure why I'm doing this. It just makes it look a bit less obvious that there's suddenly a gaping hole in our ranks where Corporal Moores used to be. And the sniper card will stay there. So that was quite devastating. Oh no, seriously? Okay. It's taken their sniper a while, but now that he's warming up, he's proving himself highly dangerous. Right, the question is, what can we do? Moore's death is unfortunate because I was looking forward to spraying their Group C with fire. I'm not entirely sure we'll be able to do it. Let's see who we've got left. 10. We're at relative range 4, so 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 12, 13. Drat. If Moores was still alive, we could have done it, but unfortunately we just don't have enough firepower. I'm going to take a massive risk because none of my guys can do it. Oh wait, we could try and take his sniper out. Do you know what? I'm going to try taking his sniper out. As a matter of course, I try to do this anyway. So we draw our random number check. Nope. The man's like a ghost. We have no idea where he is. And that counts as that group's action, so we can't do anything else except draw. Although actually, if we're not firing, maybe the tank should take a shot. Yes, okay, let's take a shot with the tank. And I think it may be worth... The range is closed. I'm going to try... Oh, he's hull down. It's going to be a difficult shot. I'm going to try making Beck's life miserable. So we're going to shoot at Beck. Beck is not going to have this, not unnaturally. So I'm treating it as relative range 0, which means I need a 1 to hit him. That's no good. Nope, I was way off. So now we draw. Looks like it's going to be a war of maneuver after all. A thought occurs to me that I could have one of the rifle boys try and rummage around to get Moore's weapon. And as we're closing the distance, maybe I should do that. We'll see how things develop. As for the Germans, well, they're not really going to do anything, although they will gleefully discard another sniper on me, since they've been having so much fun with them. So, random position check. He's going after Private Fratali now. Ooh, that was close. Fratali has just been pinned. This guy's serious. Right, and the Germans will fill up their hand. Okay, more options. And also potentially more options for Beck. So, what is the US going to do? I think I'm going to try and force some more uncomfortable decisions on the Germans. So I am going to order Group A forward. I'm taking a chance the German tank isn't really going to be up for stopping us. I hope I'm right about that, because otherwise this could go wrong very quickly. But I do have some cover for them. And I've got millions of rally cards, so I'm not that worried about this. In fact, it's a bit of a waste, but I'm going to use one of those rally cards on Private Fratali. Even if not much had happened, that's such a high number, it's not worth trying to take the sniper out in any case. So we'll just settle for having Fratali back in our ranks. And that's it. That's it for the US. Ooh, more movement cards. This is looking very good. So the Germans now have a problem on that flank. If I get to range chit 4 and I manage to throw myself into some good terrain, that's going to cause them some difficult... Well, it basically wins me the game, so they can't possibly permit that. Unfortunately, and this is where I've been rather cruel, the only person who's in a position to stop them is Private Beck. And he wants to move anyway, now that my tank has started trying to draw bead on him. So he will move. He's going to chuck himself forwards. And this is quite brave of him, all things considered, but he must stop us getting beyond range chit 3. And if he can survive, the Germans have some very decent terrain he can fling himself into. So he's hurrying forward to put a stop to our shenanigans, very courageously, I must say. But the Germans won't do anything beyond that. Let's draw a card. Okay, more movement cards. Now, what about us? Oh, wait, before that, they didn't have any terrible terrain, did they? No, they don't. At relative range 5, they wouldn't want to discard a free gully on me. That would be doing me a favour. So as it's my turn, I'm going to throw Group A into the brush. Bemoan the fact that Beck has shown some initiative in getting in my way over there. And I think I'm going to get Private McElroy to... Oh, now is this worth it? Yes, it is. Private McElroy can try and find that machine pistol. He needs a black random number check to do it. Nope. He fails to get it. I'm just going to draw a card. That's all I can do. Oh, great. Cower card. So Private Beck is going to dive into his gully, which unfortunately for him doesn't take him out of view of my tank, which is sitting quite happily on a hill, and unfortunately doesn't take him out of the view of my Group A because they're so close to him. But it's -2 cover against incoming attacks, so it's pretty decent. And the Germans, you see, the trouble the Germans have is that all these cards are potentially quite useful. So they don't really want to let them go unless they really have to. So let's just see what they get. Oh, all right, more cover. They probably will want to start discarding again soon. Yeah, same for me, really, unless I can try and force the issue too. But I don't really want to advance these guys without any good cover to move them into. The only other thing I can think of to do is maybe start moving my tank forward. But that could just be asking for trouble for no real gain. I don't know. I mean, I've got one movement card, but... Do you know what? I'm going to discard these two useless cards because they're both cower cards for the United States. I'm going to see if I get any better options. Oh, okay. Okay. With a higher number of movement cards, I wonder if it might be worth trying some infiltration and close combat next turn. I mean, Private Beck's rather reedy. I mean, to be fair, the guys facing him are rather reedy too, so I'll have a think about it. The Germans are going to do some discards. On some reflection, they will let go of the smoke card because there's not really much application for it at the moment. And it was worth it because they get that fire card. Now, meanwhile, I'm umming and ahhing a bit because, I mean, I'm in brush, which is great terrain to infiltrate from. Private Beck is in, he's in a gully. Now, shall I try infiltrating? Is it worth it? I'm going to say that it is. I'm going to play a movement card so that Private Burke doesn't need to undergo a morale check. And I'm going to try to infiltrate Beck's position. So I'm just going to grab my cheat sheet because I can never remember all of the infiltration modifiers. Here we go. So Beck is awake and aware, unfortunately. And I'm coming from brush, so, I mean, I check when you're infiltrating with a view to either doubling your firepower or going for close combat on a future turn, you cross-check the random position number based on how many defenders there are. In this case, only one. You don't count those who are pinned, and you really want to get a red number because that means you've infiltrated successfully. A black means that you haven't. So far it's looking good. I would get a 2 left shift because of the brush, but I'm already at the edge there. And gully doesn't seem to have any effect either way. I won't bother playing a concealment card. So yes, I have infiltrated the position. Nice. So Private Burke gets to have one of these snazzy infiltrator counters. And next turn, he can try to jump Private Beck, assuming Private Beck doesn't see him and shoots at him. Meantime, I'm going to carry on trying to get these people to help themselves to a weapon. So Private McElroy, can you please pick up that machine pistol? No, you can't. So I'll draw a card and see what happens. Okay, whole load of nothing. Now Beck is at very close range to us, but there's not an awful lot he can do. Now the Germans may be tempted to move him away, but if they do that, they run the serious risk that my fellows will just follow him and get to relative range 4. Or at least, sorry, to range chit 4, and that won't be good news for them. Their tank is a possibility, but it only generates 5 machine gun firepower points at relative range 4, which is where they are to me at the moment. So, you see, we've actually rather bizarrely moved slightly beyond them. It might be worth them taking a pot shot at us because of the extreme danger that Beck is in. It'll mean losing their acquisition of this group. But needs must, and the situation is desperate. Because the only other alternative they have, and they don't have enough firepower in this group to do anything. Yup, the Germans are going to desperately take a shot at my group in the brush. So the relative range is 4. They need a 0 to 2. I don't have any concealment cards, which is bad. And they hit us. So attack strength of 2. Reduced to 1 because of our cover. So Private Smith is okay. Private Burke is thankfully okay. Private Cantatore is all right, and Private DG unfortunately is pinned. But that could have been a lot worse. And of course, this group becomes acquired. And that group is not. I forgot to mention, I did remember the commander killed effect, but they drew the right number to score a hit anyway. So that was a bit unlucky for me, but as I say, it could have been worse. And that is about it for the Germans. They're just going to draw. Ouch, they need to stop getting those firing cards. Now this is a bit gung-ho of me, but this is going on for far too long, so I am going to play a movement card to enable young Private Burke to jump Private Beck. And I'm not going to attempt to take him prisoner, I just want the man out of the way. So my close combat value is 7. Those of you who've never seen this before, just so you know, to enter close combat, you can either, if you've infiltrated, that's always a prerequisite to entering close combat. There are special rules allowing other nations to enter close combat in special circumstances. I'm particularly thinking of the Russians and the Japanese here. But for normal purposes, a man has to infiltrate an enemy position. On a turn in which he is successfully infiltrated into that position, he can either undergo a morale check or play a movement card. Movement card means he automatically enters close combat. A morale check means he has a bit of a chance of doing it, but I mean, I wouldn't rate Burke's chances too highly, hence the movement card. You then compare, and in this case, it's a straight one-on-one. Normally, you do a random position check if there were more than one man in the position you're attacking. So Burke goes straight for Beck. The CCV is his close combat value with a weapon and unarmed. So his is 7, because he has his rifle and presumably a bayonet. Beck has his rifle and presumably a bayonet too. So Burke has 7, Beck has 6. I can improve Burke's score if I was able to by playing a concealment card, but I don't. The Germans similarly could improve Beck's score, but they don't have a concealment card either. So all that happens is each man draws a random number check and adds it to his total. Burke draws a 0. Beck draws a -5, because that's what a red number is. So Burke kills him. And in so doing, Burke has just won the game because the German squad has suffered 50% casualties and has therefore broken. Now, what would happen normally if the game had continued is Beck would have dropped his rifle, as is normal with casualties, and it would have ended up, as he was the last man in that position, their Group A would have dissolved. And the rifle would have ended up on this side. The victorious group, i.e. Burke's, could then decide whether they wanted to occupy, inherit the gully terrain, or whether they wanted to remain in their own. There's quite a few rules for what happens in the aftermath of close combat, but as that decisive blow has opened up the entire German right flank, I'm going to leave it there. Presumably the survivors decide it's not worth the candle and pull back, and the tank, which has been fairly roughed up as well, not physically, but when your commander's been killed and you're buttoned up, you're probably not feeling terribly full of fight. So a tough battle for us, which the US has very narrowly won there, thanks to Private Burke. And I hope that despite the errors I've made, as ever, I'm afraid I'm terrible for forgetting rules in the heat of things, but thank you all for setting me straight. For those of you who are very new to Upfront, I hope that this has been useful in showing how you set up the game and how you play through a game. For those of you who are much more experienced, my fellow veterans, a huge hello to you. Well, actually, you guys most of you have probably been in this game much longer than I have, but it's really good to have you along. Thank you so much for your comments, for your interaction, and above all, for your company. It's always really appreciated. Thank you very much. I hope that you've enjoyed this latest in my Upfront series. And I look forward to seeing you all in whichever video comes next. I'll have to look at my jobs list to see what that is. But catch you all soon. Thank you very much and do take care. Bye.